This movie is going to talk about camera controls. When you look through a digital SLR camera, it's actually like looking through a pair of binoculars. You're seeing the world through the glass. It's not until you actually take the photograph that you see if your exposure is proper or not. And the highest quality you can get is by setting all of your controls manually. So here, in this online camera simulator, I have manual as the mode. Now there's 3 ways to control the brightness and the darkness of your image. The first method is here. It's called the ISO. The ISO is how sensitive your camera is to light. For instance, the lowest ISO is 100, and you can see in the camera viewfinder the ISO is set to 100. 100 will give you the highest quality photograph, but you have to have a very bright, very sunny day or studio lights to get a proper photograph. Similarly, 3200 is generally the largest ISO, but that can give you a rather grainy image. But if you're inside and it's rather dim and you can't use a flash, sometimes you have to bring the ISO up. A good rule of thumb is to use an ISO somewhere between 100 and 800. Unless, of course, you have a special circumstance. So, a good practical way is to look at your day and decide what your ISO should be. This day is mostly sunny, so we could use either 200 or 400. Here in the camera viewfinder, you see where the cursor is. That is your meter guide. So once you set your ISO to match your day, then you use the f-stop and shutter speed to make your meter tell you that you're getting a proper photograph. So here is the aperture. The aperture is the size of the opening that's going to let light in and expose your image. Now this number might seem backwards, but f32 or 36 is actually a very, very small opening that only lets a little bit of light in. And f2.8 is a very, very large opening that lets in a lot of light. So f2.8 would make a brighter image, and f36 would make a darker image. Your camera probably goes from f4.5 to f29. And here is the shutter speed. The shutter speed is the length of time in which your digital image sensor is exposed to light. So it's like a door. The f-stop is how wide you open the door, and the shutter speed is how long you leave the door open for. And the important part is that the light meter here has the little green indicator right in the middle. When you see these plus numbers, when the little bar goes over to the plus, that means your image will be too bright. And if the image goes over to the minus numbers, then the image will be too dark. But again, you won't know until you take a photograph. So now, if we take a photograph, you'll see that the image is much too dark. Similarly, if we come over here and take a photograph with the indicator over in the plus numbers, the image will be much too bright. Now, one note about the shutter speed is that any number lower than 60, when you go below 60, you run the risk of making your image blurry. And you can see the spinning pinwheel. If we go to 140, obviously it's much too bright. We need to adjust our aperture to compensate. Now that the indicator is right in the middle, you can see that at 1/40, the pinwheel is blurred. That's because anything lower than 160 on the shutter speed can become blurry. So what you want to do is try to have a shutter speed of 100 or higher. And then adjust your aperture to match and make your exposure. But there is no right way and wrong way because it all depends on the lighting of your day. So playing with the ISO, the f-stop, and the shutter speed, all three of these elements play a part in how bright or how dark your final photograph will be. And it is your job to play with those three settings until the meter reading exposure right here tells you that you're making a proper exposure.